Good morning. Welcome to the Light on Suitability podcast. I'm your host, Elizabeth Comeau. I'm with Dean Laurelis from Lighthouse 9 Consulting and Joe Haytas, who wrote a book, 36 Strategies of Suitability. He also wrote another book. I want to keep trying to remember the name of that book. Tell me what the name of that book was.
Inside Out, From Doing Life to Reclaiming Your Life.
Exactly. And we're planning to get to that eventually, but we're going to press on with the revisiting of 36 Strategies of Suitability because it's such a fantastic resource for your loved ones to help them prepare for suitability and also for loved ones to understand the process. So when, like Joe and I so often, we talk about waivers or STIPs or things like that or going forward with hearings. And it's always, well, I got to talk to my family because my family, they're going to be disappointed if I don't go. So I'm going to go. And then Joe and I are kind of stuck with this is a big risk for you. You're looking at a high risk. You're a 5-year and all this stuff. But I don't know how I got off on that tangent, but we do deal with that. Internalization of self-help is one of those reasons that if you have lots of self-help but no internalization, and I was going to sidetrack to explain what internalization is, but you will be denied parole, even with discipline-free and all this stuff. And that comes from the Supreme Court cases of In re Lawrence and In re Shaputis. And they're the ones that took Title 15. I believe it's the introduction to 2240 or 2208, where they talk about the Supreme Court said that means insight. What's written there means insight. And what was written there was your past and present. What's the difference between your past and present mental state and your past and present attitude about the crime? And what does that equate to? Well, in the past, you had no empathy. So do you have empathy now? And in the past, you had all these character defects, and how about now? And so it's spelled out there in the Title 15 factors in black and white as to why because everyone's like, why do I have to talk about the past? It's because the Supreme Court said you have to. And so I know that Dean, in his courses that he does for people, he has a worksheet thing that he does that I've seen clients do that say, who were you then and who are you then and who are you now exercise. And sometimes they have submitted that for review or for consideration. They've put it in their parole packet. So I'm going to turn it over to Joe. I really want you to maybe dig a bit deeper into the internalization of self-help, because I know it's a pretty big topic that I would love to hear your insights of your own about.
Well, one thing about internalization is, first of all, it's an awareness. You're not just studying here just to read and intellectualize, and internalization is really a part of relearning old habits, old constructs that you have, and it's a shift. It's a paradigm shift in the way you conduct yourself and the way you think. It goes deep. It goes deep because it's like the difference between, I can draw an analogy. If you come to an intersection and you're driving, in the past, you used to go through red lights and you didn't care. And today, when you get to a red light, you have to stop because you could get hurt or you could hurt others. And so you have to stop for red lights now. And in the past, you didn't stop for red lights. And it's learning that when the light's red, you don't go through the intersection, because bad things will happen. So today, you only go through the intersection when the light's green. And that's kind of, the lesson you got to learn, but of course, much deeper. Now, everybody says, all right, internalization. Gee, what's that? So when you go and study, whenever you're in any of your classes, I don't care what it is, insight, remorse, anger management, victim impact, CGA. It's about when you come to something that applies to you, you write it down, and first of all, you say, hey, that's me, because you recognize that was part of your past behavior. So now you write it down, and you learn it. And by learning it, it's not just by answering some test, multiple choice, A, B, C, D. You, by internalizing it, you make it a part of your new behavior. Now, that's easier said than done. And that's where repetition and mindfulness come into play. And when you learn something, it should be something that, I already said, changes your past behavior, but also you have to be mindful of it. It's like, okay, if I can draw another analogy to playing a musical instrument, at first you have to consciously hit the keys on the piano or hit certain keys simultaneously for chords. And when you first do it, you have 100% of your attention on it, thinking about it mindfully every time you hit. And you're going to make mistakes. You're going to hit the wrong keys sometimes. But by practice, eventually you can play that song or whatever, that composition. You can play it unconsciously, subconsciously. You can hold a conversation while you're playing it. And that's what you want to do with your new behavior. It has to become, you should be able to do it without thinking now. And that takes practice, and it happens over time. And I believe that's true internalization. Now, it takes a lot of practice, especially if you have a certain behavior, way of thinking for years. That's what they call about deeply entrenched criminality. You have to, you're fixing something that you've been doing wrong for many years, and it's deep within your subconscious to react. So it takes mindfulness by being aware, and it takes practice. So it's not going to happen overnight, but the willingness to change, the desire to change, and then learning, and then practicing, and then making it a part of yourself where you can do this new learned behavior without even thinking. It becomes, you're rewiring your brain. It becomes, it's in your brain now, and you can do it without thinking. And that's the key. And that's what internalization is. A new behavior without thinking, changing an old past negative behavior into a positive behavior. And that's the long and the short of internalization. So that is why when you program, you have to learn your causative factors and your character defects, and then you have to take programming to address those negative character defects and causative factors. And if I can use one example, relapse prevention plans. hopefully they are learned to become automatic. Like you have a craving, so you go over here, and whatever that coping skill is, whether it's avoidance, doing something else, praying, meditating, uh, changing your perspective in the present to something else, counting to 10, whatever your coping skill is, these have to be automatic. It's like a 911 call. 911, what's your emergency? Well, that's how well you have to know this stuff, and that comes with internalization, making it part of your new behavior. There's one more thing I wanted to say about it. New behaviors. Yeah. So when you go to the hearing, you know these behaviors so well that you can just have a conversation about it with the commissioners. It doesn't, I hate it when incarcerated persons tell me on the morning of the hearing, oh, I was up till 2 a.m. studying. And I don't want to rock the boat because they're 15 minutes away from their hearing, but I think to myself, what the H are you doing being up studying that late? It's not like cramming for a college exam. This is something that has to be part of you, so much so that you can just go in there into the hearing, and as nervous as you are, just have a conversation about these learned skills. And that'll be the key. And it could make the difference, and usually does make the difference, between a grant or a 3-year denial. So that's my take on internalization.
Great. And Dean, what did you hear that stimulated some ideas from you? Because I know you work. This is literally your program is 9 modules of internalizing all of it, from A to Z, from coming to prison to parole planning. So I'd love to hear about that process with you, and how you teach internalization and the things you teach.
Right. I like what Joe said, because he's hitting the nail on the head. The internalization of self-help is that's right in our wheelhouse. And the way we teach it is, first, internalizing things is what lends to the personal transformation. And the personal transformation is what lends to being able to go into the hearing and just having that conversation. Because you're taking these new ways of being that you've been doing now for so long that it becomes part of your lifestyle, that when you're talking with the commissioners, all you're doing is talking about the way you're living now. And it makes it that much easier. And it's one thing we teach is practical application. Now, you can sit in our programs and our groups, and you can take in the information, let it go in one ear and out the other. But if you don't apply it, it's worthless. The information you gain is worthless unless you're actually living it. And that's how that's internalizing it. And an example that we have is like, sometimes the CRA, the comprehensive risk assessment, or even at the board hearing, they may ask, what's remorse to you? And a lot of times, and when we ask guys that, sometimes we get the answer, well, it's that deep sorrow, regret that you have when you do something wrong. Okay, so that's the company line. We all know that. That's what you learn in a self-help group, and all you're doing is regurgitating something that you've heard before. But internalize it. What's remorse to me? Remorse to me is the deep sorrow, regret that I have when I read my paperwork and I was disgusted with myself. I felt sick to my stomach that I actually hurt somebody in such a way that I lied and blamed them, and that influenced my remorse to live amends. So now I live giving back to others. I do groups, I do programs because I want to change. That's what remorse is to me. Now that second answer is internalized, because I'm talking about me and my situation rather than just giving the company line. So we teach guys to go in deep. The hearing is about you. When you answer questions, you answer those questions to you and your situation, not just something that you've read or studied. And I agree with you, Joe. I think when somebody's up at 2 a.m. studying, I'm wondering why. the hearing is about you. You're just simply answering questions. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and Elizabeth brought up the two of the assignments that we have, the who are you then, who are you now, because this is the transformation. This comes with the internalization. Who are you then? It's about character defects. It's about the person that you used to be. And the who are you now assignment, we have most people who do that assignment have to redo it. Because what they start doing is when they're asked who are you now, they start saying, well, I'm no longer impulsive, I give back to my community, I help others. Okay, we didn't ask you what you're doing or what you
Mm-hmm.
have or what you no longer do or what we asked who are you. And so this teaches them to focus on the question and then to internalize that question and say, okay, who am I? Well, today I'm kind, I'm compassionate, I'm loving, I'm caring, I'm responsible. Okay, that's who you are. We didn't ask what you're doing or what you have. So it teaches the guys to really be able to focus on the question that they're being asked, for one. And we tell them that the first thing out of your mouth when you answer a question is the answer to the question. Don't take them on one, because you're opening doors for numerous cans of worms. So just answer the question, and if they want more, they'll ask you for more. And you can go into a little bit of an explanation, but just don't take it and run. I think when they do that, that shows a lack of internalization. It shows they're trying to fill the blank space by just talking, and that can be problematic. But I think that the internalization, when you internalize it, that's where the transformation comes, because you're actually applying it to you. You're learning about you, and when you have the conversation with the commissioners, you're just talking about you. And it's and that's one thing that we teach is it's a conversation. And it's funny because I'll ask the guys, we'll be working on their recovery, and they're tense. Some of them are nervous when I ask questions, and then I'll just change the topic completely, and I'll ask them. I'll say, "Do you follow the NFL?" And they say, "Well, yeah." I said, "Well, who's your team?" And they say, "Well, the 49ers." Well, why do you like the 49ers? And then all of a sudden, we just get in this football conversation, and they're giving me, and I tell them after that, I tell them, "See, that's the hearing. That's the hearing. See how comfortable, and you're just having a conversation. You're relaxed. That's the hearing." And that for them, it's neat because you see the light go on, and it's like, oh wow, okay, so just relax. You're talking about you. That's it. Once and it's funny because the second part of this, become the better you. I agree. We like to get more specific with you because a lot of times guys say, well, I want to be a better man. I want to be a better person. Okay, I don't know what that means. Is that an S on your chest, knee boots, and a cape with your own theme music? I mean, what does that mean to be a better man? Break that down for me. Okay, so then they'll turn around and they'll say, well, I want to be a responsible father. I want to be a loving son, a caring husband. Okay, now that's much more clear. And the purpose of that is that you don't want the board to draw their own conclusions. You want to paint the picture for them, because if the conclusion they draw is wrong, well, then that's going to hurt you. So be clear and concise in your language so that they understand exactly what you're saying. I've had guys where I was facilitating a group one time. I asked a guy to check in, how you doing? And he says, well, I'm going with the flow, not rocking the boat. I'm not making any waves. And I'm looking at what does that even mean? I just asked you how you were doing. And I told him, I said, go again. And he says, well, I'm a little tired, but I'm excited to be here. I'm content. I said, okay, much more clear and concise. Now I get you. So it's just, those are things that we want to be able to help guys get clear on. They get caught up on everyday language, cliches and things, but what something means to one person may not be the same to another. So let's paint a clear picture. So, become the better you, how? We want to know what does that look like? Break that down for us.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's where we're at with it.
One thing I noticed too about your who you were then and who you are now, and one thing that people miss from 12-step programming is step 4 is making that searching and fearless moral inventory. It doesn't say moral and immoral. It doesn't say shortcomings. It doesn't say character. It says a moral inventory, which means I am kind. I was impulsive. I was it's both sides.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, but people assume that because the next 3 steps have to do with character defects, shortcomings, and those two, the negatives, right? Because you don't go to your higher power to ask your higher power, please remove the positive side of the moral inventory I just conducted. You would only go to your higher power to remove the negative. And so that is often missed. And I just reflected on that when you were talking about, hey, who were you then?
Mhm.
And then you can say, I was impulsive and violent and selfish,
Right.
greedy, and those type of things, and who you are now. And then it's like, it's the other side of step 4.
Yes.
It's the strengths that you have that you bring to the table. It's the ability to use positive coping strategies, which is disciplined. I'm now disciplined. I'm now committed. I'm
Yes.
all these different things. So I love that a lot. Anything else, Joe, about internalization?
No, you know what? Just as an aside here, let me say, I love each of your perspectives, and I think the three of us, we kind of covered internalization, and we each have a different perspective. Yet it all leads to the same place.
Mhm.
And so I hope who's ever listening that you combine all three of these, because from where each of us are coming, I think we have a slightly different perspective, and if you pick in the best parts of what each person said, I think it really nails it.
And one thing you both said is memorization is not internalization, and that's just exactly what your point was about. You're staying up. It's not a rote memory test. That parole hearing is not a rote memory test. It can feel like it. It can feel like it when they ask you, well, what are the 3 cycles of violence? But what they're really leading, if you don't even know the basics of, you have a domestic violence crime, you have a murder of you've murdered your spouse. Awful. But you definitely want to be,
I have one of those cases on Tuesday.
yeah. And you want to be a master,
Mhm.
literally a PhD in domestic violence by the time you sit down at that board of parole hearings. And if there was substance use involved, that too, you need to be able to teach this stuff to somebody else, and that's internalized as well. And so when you've got a domestic violence case, and you walk in there and go, what's the cycle of violence? And then you say, oh, well, it started with my family. So I get this sometimes, it started with my mom, and then I saw what my mom did. And yeah, I mean, but that's not, when they ask you that question, that is a bit contrary to my don't memorize, but it's, if you've internalized this stuff, it's
Mhm.
like Joe said at the beginning, repetition is the key to mastery. That's just rolling off your tongue. And also the 12 steps. Well, I can't remember all those 12
Yeah.
steps. Not true. Not true, because you can remember, like Dean said, every player on that field Sunday afternoon, how many times they fumbled, where they got called on the ref, and da 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 da, da, all this football stuff, right? Not a problem. So why is it? So I don't always buy into them. I don't have a good memory. Well, none of us have a good memory. Very few of us have that photographic, didactic thing where you can just read something once and tell me all about it. Not only tell me what it says literally, but take it to another level where you apply it to something. And I'm talking about anything. I'm talking about financial information. I'm talking about whatever interests you have to share with somebody, some deep subject. Psychologists know this too, right? They have a lot of those DSM-5 things internalized. So when they sit down with a person and they start presenting a certain way, they already know the pathology without even opening their DSM-5, unless it's something nuanced or something close or whatever. So really, it's about if you're using those 12 steps every day, working them, seriously thinking about them, talking about them with an accountability partner, co-sponsoring with somebody, haven't even needed to memorize it. Like, I've just heard them over and over, so I can tell you in general, step 6, you're wanting to become willing to let go of your resentments and your greed and your negative character defects, the negative column of the moral inventory that you did. You just know it, and you don't have to even repeat the exact verbiage. If you primacy and recency, right? If you actually are going to those meetings and participating in the meetings and volunteering and putting your hand up and say, I'll read the 12 steps today, you definitely know step 1, because primacy and recency, I admitted that I was powerless over my addiction and my life became unmanageable. And that should be an obvious. So when the commissioners are asking for the cycle of violence and you can't even get to the cycle of violence to list the 3 things, which shouldn't be that hard if you've, via repetition, been working it and
Right.
studying it and thinking about, okay, yeah, what did the honeymoon phase look for me after I had the explosion? And what was the trigger to the explosion that day? If you really worked it,
Yeah.
there is really minimal memorization at that point, because your brain, it goes into this other area of your brain. It moves from the brain that just has to store rote stuff and regurgitate like off a flashcard, versus now it's internalized and it moved into this other area of your brain. It's like language learning does that as well. They call it language centers, but it's very similar. So the commissioners know. So I kind of say you can't memorize your way out of prison. Why? Because if they ask you for the cycles of violence and you can't even get past that or give them one of the steps, because if you're working the steps, you just know the steps. You just do. And you can give them a basic definition, even if it's not verbatim from the 12 steps. They don't care. They're really more interested in how you work that step.
Mhm.
And so, how do I work step 6? I have to work it with a sponsor. Number 1, I have to go back to my list of my moral inventory and pick out all of the character defects and shortcomings that I have and go, am I willing to let these go? And sometimes the answer is no. So you're really not getting past step 6. You just have to keep, then you're just going, I'm willing to be willing. And you need to know those steps better than the commissioners too, because they don't even know or understand what those steps are. They only know the rote, the black and white that they can read off. Anybody can read them off. It's just, can you talk to them about it? Like Dean was saying about, what play did that quarterback make when the ball was passed and the ball was dropped, and why did that score happen, and what was the score, and what was the blah blah blah. And yeah, I've always used that since Dean told me about that football thing.
Yeah.
Something
Yeah.
similar. I don't have a good memory, my memory's going bad, and this, I go, okay, yeah. And you can kind of do, okay, well, what happened on Saturday? What's your favorite sport? Football. Oh, and then I know if it's after August, probably there's football going on. I can go, oh, okay, well, what happened to the game on Sunday for your favorite team? And then they start rattling it off. And then it's not supposed to be a gotcha moment, but it is. It's a very illustrative of
Yeah.
what you should be doing with your program. If you're really committed and dedicated to going home, your loved ones are making this a priority. It's more of a priority than football on Sunday. And, obviously breaks are important, but it really is. If you love your life, then you should love this journey, the journey of internalization, which is just not studying the night before. You could study a little bit if there's just one of those things that constantly snags you, because you just constantly, they always ask about step 4 or something, and you just want to make sure that you've got sort of close to the language, or just a refresher or just something. But yeah, studying the night before it's kind of, it's antithetical to what we're doing.
Yeah. It's a couple of things I wanted to mention was our domestic violence program has, the cycle of violence in it, but it also asks not just what is it and explains it, but how have you in your own experience, um, met each one of those three steps. You know, the
Yeah.
honeymoon phase, the tension buildup. Explain to us for you what that was like. You know,
Yeah.
what was going on, and so they provide examples which helps them to internalize. But one thing that we encourage them to do is that take if you have a domestic violence case, then take domestic violence a couple times, go through the program a couple times, then become a facilitator in it. For some people, the best way to learn is to teach.
Yeah.
So that's when they start to get to know it, they start to internalize everything. um, on another note, I had Elizabeth, one of our shared former clients who was found suitable, I spoke with yesterday, and he was telling me that since he was found suitable, people always come up to him on the yard and they're asking him 100 questions. And some people are just like, you know, what's the magic brew? You know, what opens the door? And he told him, he says, look, he says, tell the truth, be yourself. He goes, there is no magic answer. There's, you know, everybody's always looking, how do I say this? What's the correct No, just be you. Internalize it, be your
Yeah.
genuine self, go in there and
Yeah.
have a conversation, you know?
And it is, and because guys ask me, oh, they want me to script their testimony. I go, I used to do that when I was a new lawyer. I go, oh, here's the answer to that one. But once they asked that follow-up question, the gig was up. They knew the attorney or someone else had fed them the answer, and they didn't have the follow-up question
Right.
to it. And the other thing I do as well is I have my clients do their own power and control wheel, and I have them, you can write all the stuff down, but once you've done that and you write all the way around it, you know, the types of violence, physical, financial, emotional, and that sort of thing, and then I have them fill in all of the ways that and examples to force them, not the examples, not the statements, the conclusions on the wheel that they study, but your examples. You know,
Mhm.
I grabbed her arm as she was reaching for a cup out of the cabinet, or, you
Right.
know, that personalized wheel. And then I had them do the equality wheel to create their healthy plan. But that's another way of really, and I say, keep going back. And when you reflect and you think of one that you did, you know, shoved her out of the car,
Yeah.
whatever, kept
Hmm.
the money. When, you know, payday came, I would stand there at the front door and say, where's the check? And here, whatever it is. And that also helps you to internalize it, because you just keep going back to it and back to it, back to it. And you're not even really trying to study or memorize it. It just comes organically now because you're spent so much time on that exercise. And that's the dedicated guys.
Hmm.
They're doing that sort of thing. They're doing the 12-step essays that I give them. They're doing the work. They're doing the correspondence with Sister Mary. They're putting the effort into working the Road to Freedom book and really doing all those
Right.
exercises and really thinking about a book report on each chapter, and sitting down and doing it. And another thing is, to help with internalization, is writing it, because there's something about our brains and writing versus typing, or versus just studying it, reading it, and then putting it to the side. I'm working with a guy, and he just refuses to go beyond just reading the steps. And every time that I ask him what's step 3, he said, I don't know. And I've taught him a way of studying the steps, because for him, he's got some cognitive deficits. So if we can just get him to even just mention a couple of the steps, but he won't do the flashcard method that I showed him. I even made flashcards that were really simple. I just picked the 3 most important words from the step. You know, what's the most important words from step 1? Obviously powerlessness,
Right.
obviously unmanageable. um you know, and I did that for him for all those, so he only had to remember really 2, 3, or 4 words from the steps. And I say, okay, and I taught him how to do it. You know how to do, you all know how to do flashcards. You go, okay, step 1, and then you go, okay, what is it? You can come up with 1 word. Okay, great. And then you flip it over. Oh, there it is, unmanageable. And then you set that one aside, and you come back to it in the same session. And I taught him that. And they call it also space repetition methods. You could do that, but He just wouldn't do it. He just wouldn't go through the method of even trying to rotely memorize his way out of here. And anyway, that's sort of an exception to my you can't memorize your way out of there. But
Yeah.
anything else? How about you, Joe? Anything that comes to mind?
Well, I like what Dean said, excuse me, about teaching it, because if you teach something, you really know it. And once you're able to teach it, you know it, and it's internalized.
Yeah.
And that's really all I have to say.
Yeah.
That's like the culmination of learning, you know, and teaching it to others, like step 12.
Mhm.
Yeah. Step 12. I mean, everything points back to the steps. Step 12. There you go.
Mm-hmm.
Experience, strength, and hope. Bring it, share it, teach it. What do we have in store for next week's strategy 10? Anybody knows? If not, it doesn't matter.
Strategy 10. What is this, a rote memorization test?
Yeah, it's your book.
What, Joe?
I
You
don't
haven't
have all my
internalized it?
chapters. I only wrote it. I don't have it memorized. I just have the practical application in here. Becoming the better you. That's what it is.
No, that was today. Internalization of self-help. Become the better you.
We were talking, Elizabeth, right? And chapter strategy 10 is become the better you. So
Oh,
actually
really?
doing
Oh,
it.
I see. Maybe did she write that? Maybe she wrote the title down wrong on this one.
No, they're similar.
They are similar.
9
Okay,
and
good.
10. Yeah.
Okay.
That's why number 10 comes after number 9.
Yeah. Well, somebody could do some edits on that. I don't know. Maybe.
All right.
Okay. It doesn't matter. It's great topics. I love these topics. I love to chat about these topics, and I love to see you both here.
Yeah, I like hearing the different perspectives. You know, it's like, because I think we come at it from a different approach, but it's different means to the same end. You know, like you were saying earlier, which is, you know, it all comes together. But it's, I think, from sitting on this side of the table, it was different because we're actually going through it. And so what plays, how are we experiencing it, you know? And it's just like, even, you know, when we talked about the teach something. So, you know, I had a domestic violence case. And so I went through numerous times, became a facilitator, and I could speak on any of it with simplicity. I got out and, of course, was mandated to do the program, 52-week program. And then I went through it again and became a certified DV instructor. So it just, you know, it really helps now, and then to teach other guys and then get them running programs inside where they're facilitating and they're learning, you know. So it's just, I think the perspectives, I really like that, because it's I get to see your side too, you know, and as attorneys, what it is you go through. And it's funny because I see some similarities, but I also see some differences too, you know, because we work from different areas. So yeah, it's interesting. I like it.
Yeah, I love it. I really enjoy these Sundays together, just meeting up. It's good to have community, especially when you work from home, solo from home. It's also good to have community, just as a side benefit to this whole thing.
I concur.
Yeah, me too.
Good. Yeah, it's a lonely world out there. Okay, you guys, thank you
It's a
for
cold
showing
world
up.
too, sometimes.
Say that again.
It's a cold world sometimes too, most of the time.
Yeah.
It's a cold world sometimes. Yeah. And I don't know. Every now and then you just got to stay above it.
That's right.
Okay. Well, not every now and then. every single day. Stay above it. So I appreciate you guys. I'll see you next week.
Okay. Have a good weekend.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. All right. Take care, you guys. Be safe.
You too. Bye-bye.
Okay.